morning, and thank you for joining the Real-Time Working Group meeting. The presentation for this meeting is in the corresponding meeting folder on the RC portal. The meeting is being recorded, and the video file will be posted in that same folder. We will pause for questions throughout the presentation. You can raise your hand by selecting the raise hand icon above the chat window, or if you joined via audio only, press #2 on your phone. Once your line is unmuted, please state your name and affiliation first. With that, it's my pleasure to turn the meeting over to Tim Beach. Tim, please go ahead.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining the call today. During the session, we will be taking questions periodically throughout the presentation. We'll ask you to raise your hand, and then the host will bring you over, or you can put them in the chat as well, if you'd like to do that. With that, we'll move on to the next slide, please. Rich, are you going to do the roll call? Okay, mute, Rachel.
Yes, I was. Thank you. I can do a roll call at this time or after the agenda slide.
Oh, we can ask for the attendance. Yeah, that'd be great. That's fine. That's probably a little more streamlined then. Thank you. I think you guys tried that on the data working group and that worked well. Is that my understanding?
Yes. So we can go forward with the roll call now if you'd like. So for roll call, for those that have joined via the WebEx application, you already logged in by putting in your first and last name as well as your entity. So we have your attendance is already recorded. If you have only called in and not put in your information, please raise your hand, and that way we can unmute you and make sure that your attendance is recorded. So for those call-in users, I'll turn it over to the event producer to unmute your line, and that way we can track your attendance.
All right, I do see someone who's raised their hand in the WebEx. I see Eric has raised his hand, yeah.
Event producer, would you please unmute the lines? That way we can track the name and the organization.
Yep, Eric's line is unmuted.
Hi there. Sorry, I had a little trouble with the controls and I just got through. Did I understand correctly that you wanted me to raise my hand for attendance?
Yes, to all the call-in users only, just so we can track which attendees are representing. So we've got you down, Eric. Are there any other call-in users?
I'm unmuting another line.
Hi, this is John from Portland General Electric.
All right, and that is all of the hands raised.
Okay, I've got those two. Are there any other call-in users?
There are no additional hands raised at this time.
Got it, thank you. Okay, so for everybody else, we have your attendance recorded via the WebEx application. I'll turn it over back to Tim for the rest of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Again, just for a quick review, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and the host will unmute you, or you can submit it during the chat during the presentation. We have a pretty sort of standard agenda today. We'll go through general operational topics. We'll talk about where we're at for our return to building here at ISO and COVID. We'll talk about the Frequency Monitoring Mitigation Task Force, a brief update there, as well as the Voltage Violation Joint Task Force as well. We'll talk about the RC West Summer Readiness webinar coming up and the content that's involved. Kathy will have a procedures update as well. Rachel will have a year-end 2021 metrics update, roundtable, and next steps. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Thank you, Rachel. For return to buildings, so we've had our first group return to the buildings, voluntary. We started March 14th this week. As you can imagine, getting back in the office has been an adjustment for some of us for technology. We have some new technology here in place, and in fact, it's just to start this webinar, we were spinning our wheels for a few minutes in the minutes preceding just to get everything up and rolling. So, but we're making that adjustment as well. It's going pretty well. General population is going to return on April 18th. When we return, it's going to be a hybrid work schedule, but they're looking at a potential flex schedule as well, which will actually open up the hybrid to more time working from home if possible, up to including maybe some full-time at-home workers, depending on their position with the corporation or the RC West or CAISO. So we have that going on. Our COVID infections, we did have an outbreak during the Omicron, but that dissipated. Fortunately, we didn't have any serious illnesses or anybody off for a lengthy period of time, so we feel very blessed in that regard. We continue to keep our control room population isolated and separated from the general population speaking, but we've always had our control room locked down pretty tightly here at ISO with limited people able to get in anyhow. And then also we've dropped our mask requirements here. It's just purely voluntary. If somebody would like to wear their mask, they can wear a mask with no repercussions or expectations or judgment. So that's going, and that's going very well. No questions for that. Then I'll go on to the RC West Summer Readiness webinar, which is planned for May 19th, 2022 from 10 to 1200 hours Pacific time. The content will be very similar to last year. Amber Motley is going to provide a weather outlook. She's from she's a senior manager in our CAISO forecasting group. Her perspective is going to be from a WEC-wide perspective. So how we're going to see what the expectations are for weather across the summer, across our entire footprint. Jason Sherman's going to provide a wildfire outlook as well, similar to last year. Also incorporating just a quick review of our WEC threat monitor we use here and some of the functionality we have available within that for the RCs. We may do a review of the EIM tools in respective to those EIM entities, what tools they have available to them for constraint management, making sure the market flow in their area is equivalent to the SCADA flow, the biasing type, some of those type of things as well. But a quick review on that. Raja, our OE director, is going to discuss what he's going to present. He's planning for next year. Raja is new to ISO, and he wants to do a seasonal assessment. It was a little late to get that together this year for our RC West wide area, but for 2023, he'd like to do a seasonal assessment. He's going to present what that format would look like. So that'll just sort of get us thinking about 2023, even at this point. Samson Adigan will take us through the operating guide, the procedure review. We'll review our IROL and stability limits, any changes that have occurred in those procedures. We'll look at a quick review of our emergency procedures. That's the EOP 11. We have some new operating guides. One was developed late last year, the Bonanza guide, and we have a potential SEAMS, the Northwest Montana operating guide that's in development right now. A lot of discussion and work going around that, so those entities that are involved with that, particular Northwestern and PACE, as well as SPP and RC West, have all participated in that. There's a lot of discussion about how we can mitigate on that SEAM effectively and fairly across that SEAM. So one entity doesn't seem to be doing all the mitigation. So there's a lot of work going on that. That team is meeting weekly. Frequency and monitoring and mitigation procedure. This procedure has been in development for quite a while. They've really done some really great work about how we're going to monitor and how we're going to mitigate any frequency response deficiencies we may detect on the system. Right now, the key item they're working through is when we have a TSET result, or excuse me, not TSET, but a DSA dynamic stability assessment result indicates frequency below the threshold that's defined as acceptable. How do we verify that? And how do we make sure that that frequency at that part of the system is actually going to be affecting load or under frequency load shedding or threaten under frequency load shedding? So working very closely on really trying to make that procedure with enough rigor in that verification process, so we're very certain on the direction we're going as we pursue monitoring it, but also mitigating frequency response deficiency. And then WEC has agreed to present to us a resource summer assessment for summer 2022. So very happy that they've agreed to do that, and look forward to hearing what that is. Go to the next slide, please. I'll pause here for a moment if there's any questions on the summer readiness effort going forward. One thing I didn't mention, last year we did held 3 webinars. Really, those were duplicates of for each area. We felt that we could really condense it into one and maybe generate some more discussion that way as well. So we've rolled it into one webinar this year, RC West-wide. Okay, hearing no questions. Again, the Frequency Monitoring Mitigation Task Force has been meeting. There was a little pause over the holidays, but they're meeting every couple of weeks now. And actually, there's quite a bit of email traffic going on related to that. One error in the slide here is I use TSAT results. It's actually DSA results. So again, they're working on the process to verify those results. And then the dispatch process and implementation of redispatch, if that's needed to mitigate the frequency response. They're talking about how would that be determined, how would that be assigned, that type of thing. So quite a bit of work going on there, and really appreciate anybody that's on this call that's been involved in that effort, because it is sort of a cutting edge. It's a new area that a lot of us, are new to monitoring frequency response in real time, and then also mitigating it. So that's going on as well. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Samson Adigan to discuss the voltage violation joint task force and give an update on it. Samson?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Tim. So we had an initial kickoff meeting for the task force on last Wednesday, March 9. And again, the goal of the task force is to improve situational awareness for monitoring voltage SOLs in real time in Rtca and HANA, to closely match TOP operating practices and review the SOL methodology. So based on the initial discussions so far, the task force is leaning towards providing more clarity within the SOL methodology for establishing normal and emergency system voltage limits. Initially, RC West was proposing that the emergency limits be by default considered the SOL. However, the task force agreed to look at current work being done by NERC to establish, to provide a new definition for system voltage limits. That's NERC Project 21509. Which, that project, based on that definition, NERC is still proposing to have a normal, for TOPs to establish a normal and emergency limit. So that will be the focus of the task force. For now, we'll be looking at providing more clarity on how TOPs should establish normal system voltage limits. And then afterwards, also look at the emergency limits to see if more guidance needs to be provided on that. And then another aspect that the task force will be looking at is exclusion requirements, bus exclusion requirements for monitoring line side series capacitor limits, as well as a process for TOPs to submit buses that need to be monitored versus what should be excluded from monitoring. Currently, in Rtca and HANA, you would notice a number of the buses being monitored should not be monitored per the methodology, but we don't have an efficient process for RC West to get that data from entities. Currently, entities just provide a list of buses, but those buses don't necessarily match what's in the model. So it's a tedious manual process in our engineering group to match the list provided by the entities to the model. So the task force will be looking at improving that submission process as well. So that's my update on the task force meeting. For now, we'll be meeting bi-weekly every Wednesday. So our next meeting will be next Wednesday. That's all I have, Tim. Unless there are any questions.
We'll pause for some hand raising here, but I will just, while we're waiting to see if there's questions, really just, express my appreciation for those who are participating in this task force. All of us, not only RC West, but when Peak was here, when I was at other companies, we all struggle with these high voltage limits and what to do about them, how to monitor them, and not have a flooded Rtca with lots of potential what look like voltage issues on the system. So really appreciate the efforts to align operating practices with limits and that type of thing. So I think it'll greatly improve our situational awareness around voltage going forward. So thank you very much. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Kathy for the procedure update. Kathy?
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Fernandez with procedures update. The first slide here I've got is showing all recently published procedures. Most of these were just for periodic review and minor changes. We did have RC 9310, the Northern Nevada N-1-1 mitigation procedure, removing a section and renumbering. RC 9110 had some miscellaneous updates there. Let's see, we had RC 120 updated for, we added exceptions to data requests in coordination with SPPRC, and changes were coordinated. And then we had RC 620 updated the pre-OPA D+3 study process. RC 9120, the Oregon export IROL, updated to include John Day to Grizzly #2 and Buckley to Grizzly, to Grizzly. And then we had RC 100A changes to the north south desk AOR changes. Some BAs moved to the south desk to kind of share the load there. And that's what I've got for this one here. Is there any questions on this current slide? Okay, I guess we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, this slide is showing the current pending updates that are going to be coming up within the next month to 2 months. And we've got RC 120 again and RC 120 A, B, and C. These are for annual review, and then we've got some added language in RC 120. We've some additional updates in RC 120A, and then we have the TEPC WEIM go live changes that will be included in RC 120B. And then we've got the others here are for mostly annual and periodic reviews with a couple of additional changes. And they're fairly minor. We've added for RC 330A, we've updated to reflect Fortis BC involved with the boundary to Juanita. And then I've just updated the affected parties list of RC 330C appropriately as requested. And those are the updates as shown on this slide. I do have a couple of additional slides for the pending updates, okay, we'll just continue then. For this one here, again, mostly periodic and annual review with minor changes. We've got our restoration procedure and attachments. Those are out. Let's see, those are just pending. Those are to be effective 5/1. We've got RC 520, loss of monitoring and analysis tools. We just have added a step for the RC operator to review offline study results with the OE and then updated some standards. RC 540 with a periodic review and then some other minor updates, as well as 540A. And then the other two are periodic updates and some coordination with IID, I believe. And then we've got one more slide with a couple of updates. We've got RC 9000 open loop guideline procedure, clarifying instances of the TOT2 with WEC path numbers and clarified PDCI operation and northeast to southeast separation. And then we've got RC 9540 Appendix C for ambient temperature ratings for the S line and some added notes. Actually, these are the two that are going to be coordinated with the IID procedure, and our 7820 on the BA side, the CAISO BA side. So that is all I got. Are there any questions on any of the procedure updates or recently published procedures? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd also like to express appreciation for your efforts to keep us organized in our procedures here. Kathy does a great job organizing, keeping procedure reviews on schedule, and keep the timeline, keep the rest of us on the timeline for when those items are due, and then also organizing the updates to not only this group, but other groups as well. So much appreciated, Kathy. So next is RC metrics, and I'll turn it over to Rachel for that.
Thanks, Tim. So happy St. Patty's Day, everyone, celebrating. We're going to go into the year-end 2021 RC metrics. This report is available on the RC portal under the real-time working group. There's a folder for RC metrics where you can view the quarterly documents there. And we recently reviewed some of these slides in the public and executive RC oversight committee sessions. So we'll jump into the metrics here. The first one being on state estimator solutions for residual errors, megawatt flow. So we're showing the megawatt totals on 500 kV lines, an increase of 48% from January to December. On our next slide, we're showing the 345 and 230 kV lines, seeing a reduction of 22% from January to December, with a spike there in late Q2. And then the 138 and 115 kV lines for 2021, showing a decrease of 31% from January to December. And as you can note, in April, we started breaking this out into telemetry errors. So we're showing the telemetry errors separate from the entity breakout for anomalies. So those are separated, and we'll look to refine this in 2022. On this slide, you'll see an overall breakout of the megawatt totals for each of the different voltage levels, just to see a side-by-side comparison of how the residual errors are stacking for each of the voltage levels. And then for our goal progress update for 2021 year end. On this last slide here for the megawatts, we're showing each of the different voltage breakouts, but we're showing it in the time horizon daily and showing the vertical bars as the model builds that were implemented. So we're seeing late into 2021 as a model build goes into production, not as much of a huge spike with regards to residual errors peaking afterwards. So we've definitely matured this process a ton, and we'll look to further refine as we head into the 2022 metrics. So the same metric, but now looking at Megavar totals. First, for 500 kV lines, we're seeing an increase of 3% from January to December. And then for the 345 and 230 kV lines, we're seeing an increase of 17% from January to December. And then for the 138, 115 kV lines, a decrease of 39% from January to December. This overview slide will show some of the residual errors for megavars for all the different voltage levels. And then our goal progress update for 2021. And then on the time horizon, again, looking similarly at the daily values, we're not seeing the huge trends with regards to spikes after a model build, but we are tracking this to see how the megavar sum as well as the megawatt sum is changing on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so our next metric that we'll go over here is on Rtca non-converged contingencies. This metric tracks the number of non-converged contingencies divided by the total number of contingencies. We're seeing an average percentage by month. And our goal for this metric is to minimize that percentage. And here's our progress for 2021. Our next metric here we'll go through is on application availability. We're looking at the application availability in 10-minute intervals for state estimator, Rtca, HANA-based for security analysis, and then HANA study. And then on this slide here, we report any outages that we're observing that are over 30 minutes in Pacific prevailing time, or if it's showing for 6 intervals. So we'll take a pause here. We've gone through a couple different metrics and see if there are any questions before we move on to the next step. All right, event producer, do you see anyone's hand raised or any comments in the chat?
I do not, and just a reminder to use the raise hand icon if you wish to ask a verbal question and direct your chat questions to all panelists via the chat drop-down menu.
All right, we'll move into our next set of metrics here on next phase studies. The first step being with regards to DACA accuracy. So we're comparing the Rtca results compared to the DACA results and have daily values saved off by the real-time OE's DACA process. So we're showing the 2020 format where we have both those observed in DACA and showed in Rtca. And then for 2021, we are solely sticking to those that were not observed in day ahead, but showing up in real time as we're looking to minimize this blue value. This goes forward into our 2021 goal, which was to sustain the current performance for those not identified in day ahead, but showing up in real time. And here is our performance for 2021. Our next metric here on next day studies is with regards to the operational planning analysis, OPA publishing the next day study for tomorrow in the published time. We have a box and whisker plot here to show the range of published times and a table to show the average modified time that is displayed. And then for our goal progress update, we're looking to improve the publishing time and determine how many days that it is posted before 1600. Okay, so on our next day studies metric, the next one is with regards to day ahead load forecast error. We're comparing the day ahead submissions for load forecast compared to the actual hourly values that are submitted and summing that error for each entity here on the screen. So this is the sum of that error broken out by entity for each individual month. And then to compare it for a metric, we have a comparison chart which compares the number of days that the entity has improved from the RC West average 2020 performance for a given month. So we want the numbers to increase, showing the number of days that is improved from last year. Looking at an RC West as an area, we're looking to reduce that overall load forecast error comparing 2021 to 2020 as our baseline year, and this shows our 2021 goal progress update. I'll take a pause again and see if there's any questions anybody has regarding these metrics, either what we've gone in the slides today, or maybe if you've had a chance to look at the report, if there are any questions or concerns you may have. Okay, event producer, do you see anything in the chat? Anyone's hands raised?
I do not see anyone in the queue at this time.
Okay, so we'll go through the rest of the metrics then. Our next one here on actual and Rtca exceedance contact durations. This one is measuring the RC operator actions via exceedance logs from the start time of the event to the time of first contact with the RC operator or the TOP. And so this tracks for category 1 and category 2. This metric we're looking to further improve in 2022 as we move from looking at the logs to looking at the raw data in Rtca. For a goal progress update, we break it out by category 1 and category 2 contact times, as outlined in our RC operating procedure, RC 130, and look in measuring the events where the contact time occurs within the time interval. Our next metric here is on canceled outages. We're measuring an entity's canceled outages compared to their total number of outages and summing that percentage to show the RC West area here for both generation as well as transmission. We're seeing a 10% decrease in generation and 16% decrease in transmission for January to December. Our next metric here looks at RC forced outages, looking at if the RC forced is yes, compared to their total number of outages, both for generation as well as transmission. And then our next metric here is looking at the response time of RC inquiry tickets. We're looking at City as our source system to measure the tickets that are opened and closed within a given month, as well as the average business days, the tickets with CAISO support, and overall time to closure if there's back and forth. Okay, and the last metric we'll go through here today is with regards to the working group attendance. Like we mentioned, we did roll call at the beginning of this meeting, and we started in February. And as a reminder, this information is confidential. So this shows with regards to all of the different working groups and the attendance throughout 2021. And then we have an entity breakout on the left for data exchange and on the right for HANA CPG. And on the next slide, we have the Emergency Preparedness Working Group, and on the right-hand side, the Real-Time Working Group. And then the last two working groups, the Training Working Group and the Oversight Committee. Okay, so we have an overview of our goals progress for 2021. We'll look at further refining these metrics and getting into more details into 2022, but we're looking to further this. So next time that we have the real-time working group, we'll have the 2022 Q1 data available to present. I'll turn it back over to Tim for a roundtable and to see if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you for all your efforts gathering these metrics. A couple of metrics we're really focused on this year, not only within this metric set and goal set, is the SC solution. We're working pretty closely with our IT group to improve that, in particular, the SC solution in our northeast area, which would be the Montana area. There's a number of phase shifters up there, and we have some enhancements coming that will help with some of that the SC solution and the Rtca results. The other one we're looking at is the Rtca, or the contact time for SOLs. We've done a little looking out in the industry. There isn't really a lot of basis for what is that actual time. What should that be? And we're hoping this metric will sort of indicate what we expect it should be over a pattern of time. We do have some functional enhancements that we're working with right now. We've taken partial delivery on. They're not fully implemented yet, but it's more of an automated method to gather the data for that metric. Right now, it's a very manual process for us. And from Rachel's perspective, and Samson does a lot of review as well, we're really trying to automate that, but also not duplicate logging efforts and that type of thing as well. So our subject matter experts in those areas are continuing to try to improve that data and also determine what the appropriate time would be going forward. So, but again, thank you everybody that works on those metrics, much appreciated. Couple things, next RTWG meeting is May 12th, and then we have the summer readiness on May 19th, the following week. So the next RTWG meeting will be probably a version very similar to this, and we'll have more content in the following week as it directly relates to summer readiness. We can incorporate that all in one webinar going forward, or for that day, or for this season. Okay. Any roundtable items that would like to be discussed from the group? Again, please raise your hand or submit in the chat, a question via chat. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. I know it's in the heart of maintenance season. There's a lot of outages going on. We all have many things to do as we prepare for summer and the spring weather season. So I appreciate your time today, and we'll talk to you in May. Thank you very much.